New York should reject a return to private prison labor. During the intense heat of the summer of 1894, New York State reached an important milestone toward the complete abolition of slavery. At our sixth constitutional convention, we outlawed contract convict leasing, the selling of labor of those incarcerated to private entities, a practice so deplorable that it was described as tantamount to Southern slavery. Over 125 years ago, we abolished the contracting of prison labor because it was inhumane and unfair. But this January, Governor Kathy Hochul proposed a plan to change New York's constitution to reauthorize the private utilization of incarcerated people. The governor states that the program would be voluntary and pay a competitive wage. Competitive with what? Zero? But the proposal does not address the foundational flaw that enshrines modern-day slavery for those incarcerated in New York. While similar programs in other states have allowed for billions in corporate profit, formerly incarcerated people have reported never using the marketable skills learned upon release. Today, over 31,000 incarcerated New Yorkers are forced to work under the threat of punishment for as little as 10 cents an hour before their wages are garnished to pay fines and fees. The majority of these workers earn 33 cents or less per hour, staffing hundreds of jobs, from running in prison programs to groundskeeping and laundry, wages that can only be called slave wages. This is because an insidious exception in our state's constitution, which allows New York to require the labor of those it incarcerates for state purposes. The forced labor. Now, remember when Cuomo was getting them to make hand sanitizer?
We'll be providing this to governmental agencies, schools, the MTA, prisons, et cetera, because you can't get it on the market. And when you get it, it's very, very expensive. That is now in production. We'll start distribution. We're going to distribute it to New Rochelle, which is a hot spot for us, because literally we're hearing from governments that they're having trouble getting it. A gallon bottle is $6.10. The 7-ounce bottle is $1.12, our cost. And then there's a very small size, which is 84 cents. So it's much cheaper for us to make it ourselves than to buy it on the open market. If you continue the price gouging, we will introduce our product, which is superior to your product, and you don't even have the floral bouquet. So stop price gouging.
The forced labor exception emboldens exploitation and cruelty. Formerly incarcerated individuals have described retaliation and severe punishments, including solitary confinement, for refusing to work dangerous jobs or to staff assignments for which they have no training. BB, a formerly incarcerated woman at Avalon Correctional, witnessed constant sexual advances and brutalization by guards who dangled job assignments as a weapon. BB told advocates that after refusing to perform sexual favors, she was shut out of her preferred work assignments. For a lot of the jobs that I tried to get, they wouldn't let me, just because I wouldn't do what they wanted me to do for them. An incarcerated person who braves the system still cannot meet their own needs with meager wages they receive. Inflated in-prison prices, including the exorbitant cost of communicating with loved ones, a 20-minute phone call costs 86 cents. A single postage stamp costs 33 cents, mean that those inside must rely on their families for financial support. As a result, 1 in 3 families supporting an incarcerated loved one go into debt, according to the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, a burden borne chiefly by communities of color across our state. It took a global crisis to finally pull back the curtain on our exploitive prison labor system. From the earliest days of the pandemic, incarcerated people labored to produce the hand sanitizer and other PPE needed by their fellow New Yorkers, even while they were prohibited from accessing these life-saving products themselves. But Governor Hochul's plan will not end our abusive prison labor system. New York must end the practice of forced labor.
Work 40 hours.
Vidal Guzman knows about the work conditions inside New York State prisons firsthand.
I was making 16 cents an hour when I was incarcerated. Usually at the end of the week, I make probably $3.50.
Now a prison reform advocate. Tonight, Guzman is rallying against the new proposal from Governor Kathy Hochul, clearing the way for New Yorkers in prison to be employed by private companies.
In her executive budget, Governor Hochul proposed changing New York State's constitution to allow for private companies to contract incarcerate the labor of incarcerated people. And we find it really problematic.
Jacqueline Goswag-Panitz is a legal aid society paralegal. She recently wrote an op-ed article sounding the alarm about the state's potential return to private prison labor, saying incarcerated people are not given the same workplace protections as other New Yorkers.
Over 31,000 people who are incarcerated in New York State are forced to work under the threat of punishment. which can include solitary confinement.
In laying out her budget priorities earlier this year, Governor Kathy Hochul proposed a jails to jobs plan, which would allow New Yorkers in prison to work for private companies. The jobs would be voluntary, wages would be competitive, and the governor's office stresses the plan would give incarcerated people critical job experience to prepare them for life after prison. But Donna Hilton is skeptical. She spent 27 years in New York State prison.
You're getting labor off the backs of people and feeling that it's okay.
More than a century ago, back in 1894, New York State banned the use of inmate labor for private gain.
It's called convict leasing.
Governor Hochul is now pushing for the jails to jobs plan as part of the ongoing state budget negotiations. A spokesperson for the governor's office tells Pix 11 News, Governor Hochul's executive budget includes bold initiatives to embrace this once-in-a-generation opportunity to invest in our future. And we look forward to continuing to work with the legislature to finalize a budget that serves all New Yorkers.
How New York prison slave labor powers a 50 million manufacturing enterprise. Now, this article was written November 2nd, 2017. Okay. The hand soap dispensers in City Hall bathrooms and secure therapy desks used to shackle prisoners during class on Rikers Island are just a few of the products made by the incarcerated New Yorkers who earn as little as 16 cents an hour in a 15 million a year industry. The business is called CoreCraft, described on its website as the brand name for the Division of Correctional Industries, operated by the State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, known as DOCCS. While CoreCraft's operations are largely hidden behind prison walls, a 2014 DOCCS report says CoreCraft employs about 2,100 inmates and 288 civilians in 14 facilities across the state. CoreCraft averages about $48 million in sales annually, according to the 2014 DOCCS report, a figure confirmed by an independent state comptroller report. Revenue from sales goes into the state general fund. Revenue from sales go into the state general fund. According to DOCCS spokesperson Patrick J. Bailey, the average CoreCraft inmate wage during 2015 and 2016 was 65 cents an hour, or about $1,092 per inmate per year. They're making $1,092 a year. The lowest CoreCraft wage is 16 cents per hour, though some can earn bonuses equal up to $1.14 per hour. I wonder what you got to do to get them bonuses, because BB already told us. At these rates, prison labor is prison slave labor. Besides the desks and soap dispensers, CoreCraft manufactures a wide range of institutional products, such as state license plates, soap, street signs, janitorial supplies, metal crowd control barricades used by the NYPD, wooden benches used throughout the state court system, and office furniture, including the Attica Series desk, a desk named after the notorious prison, which has a sheet metal fabrication factory behind its walls. State law requires local governments to purchase commodities from CoreCraft if it has a product that satisfies the form, function, and utility required. The law, in effect, gives CoreCraft monopoly-like power over the statewide municipal institution market because the law exempts CoreCraft from other state law mandating competitive bidding. Doug Turetsky and his colleagues at the Independent Budget Office provided a detailed accounting of the city's purchases dating back to March 2013, totaling about $41 million. According to Turetsky, at least 26 city agencies have purchased CoreCraft products. According to Bailey, New York City is the largest single purchaser of CoreCraft products. Kathy Hansen, a spokesperson for the Department of Citywide Services, the city agency responsible for keeping city agencies supplied, tells Gothamists that this fiscal year, the New York spent more than $15 million on CoreCraft items. The purchases ranged from shelves to office furniture to crowd control barriers, Turetsky says, and also includes something identified as no competition lockers, file cabinets for elementary school, coastal storm signs, and ergonomic chair ordered just last month by the comptroller's office for $1,017. In addition to the comptroller's office, one other elected city official made purchases from CoreCraft. The mayoralty, according to the IBO's accounting, purchased $139,000 worth of office furniture since 2013. Natalie G., spokesperson for Mayor Bill de Blasio, tells us state law requires the city to contract with New York State preferred source vendors, which includes CoreCraft, if sufficient grounds are met. For example, Favi adds, prisoners have been killed fighting fires in California and Arizona, perhaps other places. Heather Ann Thompson is a University of Michigan history professor who studies prisons and is the recipient of the 2017 Pulitzer Prize in History for her book on the Attica Rebellion, Blood in the Water. Thompson says the compulsory prison labor is an institutional descendant of slavery. The practice of requiring prisoners to work, Thompson explained, traces back through the black codes that Southern states enacted after the Civil War and the racist convict leasing system that ensued, which resulted in some former slaves being rented back to their former masters. In 1871, for example, the Supreme Court, Virginia, in Ruffin v. Commonwealth, referred to prisoners as slaves of the state. New York State deconstructs private prisons, become first state to make move. The first action is to prohibit private prisons from operating within the state. Since 2007, Assemblymember Ortiz and State Senator Nazzoli introduced a bill entitled A4484B S4118 that made New York a unicorn in this space. Along with two other states, the Empire State does not allow the operation of private prisons within the state systems, though some contracts are still allotted to some companies. The bill states the following: in the effort forced upon the state and local governments to cut operating costs, some are turning to the privatization of prisons. Inevitably, hungry bottom-line adventurers appear ready to take the public money. The second action is to divest state pension funds from Core Civic and GEO Group, the largest private prison companies in the nation. Last year, New York State, under the supervision of State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli and the push of Harlem Senator Brian Benjamin, pulled $10 million from the aforementioned companies for having these private prisons. The third action happened a few weeks ago. The state Senate passed a bill, S5433. This bill prohibits New York State chartered banks from investing and providing financing to private prisons. Senator Benjamin noted in introducing the bill in front of a Bank of America branch, the goal is to starve private prisons of capital. My constituents do not put their hard-earned savings in a bank like the one we're standing in front of today, expecting that those funds will be used to finance mass incarceration. Whether through organizing and community pressure or tools like the bill I'm announcing today, we can and must bring an end to private prisons. Everyone is banking on Governor Cuomo to make this bill a law. By doing so, he would be the first governor to make such a strong statement against the private prison industry.
So let's see what happened to the bill. Aren't you interested to see what happened to this bill? Why we're even in the position that we are in now? Right here. Refer to corrections, refer to rules passed in Assembly, died in the Senate, returned to the Assembly, committed to rules, passed Assembly, delivered to the Senate, passed the Senate, and then vetoed by the governor. Then 2003, 2004, it was vetoed by the governor. Vetoed by Cuomo, the very man that is trying to run again.
Well, you're talking about a continuum.
Okay.
Because remember, there was enslavement in New York coming up into the 1700s, going into the 1800s. So the largest plantation in America during the 13 colonies was in Brooklyn.
Really?
Yeah. And also, Battery Park.
Yes.
Okay, that's where the docks used to be, where they would bring the Africans. And they would march them across to the other side of New York, which would be Wall Street, where they would be sold in Wall Street. And when you're dealing with stocks and bonds, the thing is that Africans were considered to be chattel because they also sold cattle. They sold a lot of things, but they sold black folk. Mm-hmm. And so basically, stocks and bonds comes from livestock in bondage.
Wow.
See, it's right in front of us, but it's just that unless you zero in on the conversation, you miss certain important points to understand.
Well, it's always been, going back to prison farms. I haven't heard of anything recently, but I've always heard it down through the years. Sure, and the reason there isn't more of it is because there are a lot of white people who have jobs, and this is kind of depicted in that movie Shawshank Redemption. People might remember the scene where the warden of the prison, a character called Warden Norton, was talking to a contractor who had workers, all right? And this contractor came to the warden of the prison saying, you have free labor. You have prisoners out here working on these farms and doing contract work and doing road work and all like that. And I'm out here trying to I'm in the contract business doing road work and doing farm work, and so your prisoners are competing with me. And so I'd like for you to have your prisoners work somewhere else, and I'll bribe you and give you some money on the side so that you will always consign them to work somewhere else other than where I have my contracts made with the state where I'm making money. because I have to pay my people to work. If you got prison labor, you get free labor.
Yes.
And there's always been that contrast among the white supremacists.